we have one of the best cliffhangers finally brought to life. We seen how Storm in the last episode, she on Fire Made Flesh, she was at the bar in Texas and Forge came over talking about, yo, I can help you. So now we see the answer to that cliffhanger, Life Death Part 1. Here we go. They gave us a nice quick scene here. Forge and Storm start off having dinner, and like I said, concept of romance, you can see it, and you can see how Storm is actually feeling Forge, and Forge clearly is in love with Storm. You can just kind of feel those vibes in the beginning. Made her some bison chili, she's eating it with some biscuits, they having fun. Storm is asking questions, and Forge breaks down how she's like, yo, so what happened? I don't want to, I don't want to be rude, but how did you lose your arm and your leg and everything? And she's basically like, yo, I was a soldier from the past. Remember, we spoke about the X Factor and working with the government, but he didn't break that down completely to her. She just basically said, I was a soldier. That's it. So Storm doesn't know the X Factor background working for the government yet. So now Storm is saying, well, what's the origin of your power? Like, how are you so amazing? And he basically breaking down, like, the most people can't use most of their brains. You know how they say, we only use 5% of the brain, 10% of the brain, 15% at most is the brain, people say here and there. But that's what that's what Forge is basically saying his powers are. He can go into different parts of the brains and he can see basically the blueprint of how to create things and bridge different things together. So that's the way he uses his genius to be an engineer and create different devices and stuff like that. The science and stuff that he uses. So as they're getting into that and Storm is just loving all of Forge's powers, and like I said, it's romantic vibes in their dinner date. Storm starts thinking about how she really misses her powers and she can't wait until, or she wishes that one day she could have her powers back. And Forge is basically like, you know what, don't worry about that. I got a nice surprise for you. So it starts off where you see Storm got her arm out and her hair's going in the wind and you can't see anything, but it looks like she's basically flying. So it looks like, oh wait, Forge basically gave her powers back. But you end up seeing that they just horseback riding. And she's loving it because she was describing how she loved the wind flying with her powers because feeling the wind on her face was amazement. It was dangerous, but it was beautiful. And she was able to get that with the horseback riding. But Forge, on the other hand, you can see that he had other plans as well. As he's seeing her ride and giving her, yo, you need to know thyself. Go, you can't beat me. You can't ride faster than me. And she's like, what? So she starts riding the horses fast. She ends up going past Forge. And he starts to chuckle as she goes right to an edge of a hill where she's about to fall off. It looks like Forge wanted her to fall off the cliff so she can be forced to use her powers out of necessity and start flying. But she got saved. She stopped, saved herself. She wasn't really mad. Kind of looked at Forge a little funny, but she was cool with that and then end up going right back to the house. But at this point, they're at the cliff and they're talking and Forge is like, so how are you feeling with the horseback riding? Did that make you remind you of your powers? She's like, yeah, I can feel the wind, but one thing I'm realizing is the wind is different here. Something's a little off. And this owl that he only flies one way. He's not going like a normal bird would fly. This owl's flying in one direction. And Forge just basically used some excuse. Yeah, it's probably just something with the weather changing everywhere. And maybe you can end up changing the weather when you get your powers back. So they end up going back to Forge's place. And Forge puts her into the machine. And Forge, when he puts her into the machine, she's nervous, like, all right, let's go. She goes in the machine, tries to get her powers back. She ends up going outside and trying her hardest to use her powers and end up crying because she realized she can't do it. And it had her in tears. And Forge is just like, don't worry, I'm gonna try. Don't worry about it. So as it cuts off, Storm is off doing her own thing. And she just happens to be looking for Forge and comes down to the basement. And he's back in the lab working on fixing the machine again. So Storm is like, yo, all right, I get that you want to help me, but why are you going so hard? Why are you trying so hard? This is abnormal at this point right now. So once Storm starts questioning Forge, the truth comes out. Forge admits that he used to work for the Department of Defense. And he used to help them create different weapons and technology that will end up taking away some of the worst powers, the worst mutants' powers. So the most savage and wild mutants, he ended up creating the basically the FOH neck collar that takes away their powers. And that is what they used to create the gun that ended up killing taking away Storm's powers.